1:12 p.m. We had a little late start because of technical difficulties with some of our equipment. This is a public meeting being video and audio recorded for cable broadcasts and internet posting on www.dayton-ma.gov and YouTube. My understanding is we do not have Zoom capabilities. This is not a Zoom meeting, it's strictly, we're recording?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Attendance roll call, Mrs. Catavia.
Yes.
Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry.
Aye.
Mr. Mello.
Aye.
Mr. Woods. Mrs. Goulart. We have a full committee. We got to watch the clock because we have a public hearing scheduled for 1:30, so any discussion prior to 1:30, I'm going to say at about 1:28, I will stop whatever is happening, so we will be prepared for that public hearing.
I'm sure I'd like to make a motion to move 5A, the update on Clearwater Solar Project, 1420 to William Street, up on the agenda because the developer is here.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
Mr. Mello? Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Goulart, aye. Gentlemen, if you would like to come up to the podium, who wants to talk about the complaint regarding, this is the Clearway project behind Arujos, okay? So my understanding, there was a meeting and you, Mr. Pilling and Mr. Aguirre were present. Could one of you give us some information? I have not been in the loop. I was not notified about the problem. I have no information on it other than an email. So I've got to be brought up to speed. I don't know why I didn't even get voicemail or an email, but anyhow, that's behind us. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go back further than that meeting. So they have started, this is up behind Arujos. They started construction a couple weeks ago. They've been in there clearing trees, popping stumps, rocks. The trees were all piled up. They brought in a wood chipper to chip the wood. And during the process of that, they were dragging the trees across the site. We are in a drought, and so dust was going everywhere. And we got a call from one of the neighbors about the dust and the noise, and we went up there and looked at it. There were some measures that were taken to try and alleviate it, but it still was a lot of dust. The neighbors called us again. We went, the office manager, Mrs. Grassi, and myself went up to meet the homeowner at their house, and we then arranged a meeting for the next morning to meet with Clearway and Signal, and us. We were the facilitator, and we met here and went over everybody's concerns, and I thought we had a pretty clear path toward moving forward, but obviously we're still in a drought. And I think we're pretty much done with the trees, but I think that's about it for now. I think I'll let Mr. Cruz tell his side or hit the rest of the story, and then I can supplement this meeting.
Before you speak, Mr. Cruz, who was at this meeting that you're talking about?
Mr. Cruz, Mr. Warren, who's sitting in the front row, Mr. Crucifulli, and his girlfriend Tara Schaefer, Rosalind, and myself. So there was 6 of us.
Who was there for town officials besides you?
Just Roz and I.
Okay. Mr. Cruz, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we did receive the concern about the dust, and Todd facilitated a meeting with us and Frank and Tara, and I appreciate, first off, thank you for having the opportunity to come in and address this. We do appreciate that. We want to be a good neighbor and do the best we can for that. So the dust was impacting Frank and Mr. Pasuli. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use his first name. I apologize. We've talked quite a bit. But so We've implemented a few measures. We have a 500-gallon water truck that's running throughout the day to suppress the dust. We have also installed new BMPs back by the property line so as to make sure there'll be no water runoff. And on top of that, we installed some mulch down to minimize the amount of dust that we will generate. I'm happy to report the tree grinding activities are done. So now we have a stone road into about the center of the site. That minimizes any dust coming up because no one's driving on dry dirt that way. We are also going to be operating equipment and we'll be running that water truck throughout the entire day that we have to operate that equipment out there. And hopefully we'll get some rain and then the drought will ease a little bit. But in the meantime, those are the measures that we're going to take and continue to take to try to mitigate any dust that impacts our neighbors.
Why didn't you use the calcium stuff? Yeah.
Calcium chloride, thank you, Todd. I felt like in talking with some of the folks I work with, I've used palleters on other projects quite a bit, out west especially. We thought it might not be a good idea to use calcium chloride for water quality concerns that could come up in the future from that. It is kind of a toxic substance. It's not really lethal, but it's not the best thing in the world. So I felt like putting down water, something that's natural instead of the pellet would be, I'm sorry, let me put that off. Let's cut off. So anyway, so I thought it might be in the better interest for the town and the community for us not to use the pellet, but to use the water. We can still be open to that if you want to suggest that, but we're trying to use a natural process.
So I can confirm that everything you said is what has happened. In the interim, we got a call from a news reporter for the Taunton Daily Gazette, who that was the conversation that Mike Mullen, myself, and Mr. Aguirre talked over the phone with the newspaper reporter. They were, for the most part, it seemed like they were concerned with how we were going to handle future solar developments to alleviate these problems for abutters moving forward. Obviously, this one, say the tree clearing's all but done at this point in time. And that seemed to be the direction he was going, and he asked us a bunch of questions and asked us about all the solar projects in town and where they were located and that kind of thing. Jim, is there anything more you want to add to that? I haven't seen a story in the paper yet, but.
I concur.
I did visit Mr. Pasuli at his home per his request so that I could see the actual dust impact of his house. And there is dust on the windows, there's dust on the roof, there's dust on the pool cover, there's dust on the grill, everything I looked at.
The vehicles.
And the vehicles too. And so we have offered to clean the pool, to power wash this home, and detail both vehicles with the project. As a way to offer, an olive branch of, we're sorry that we impacted you, and so here's what we think we can do to help out. And that's what we have planned for now. We can meet to that at the end.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Ms.
How many gallons approximately a day are you using?
About 1,000, we fill it up twice. It's 500 gallons, and then we have the access to the blue water tank where they put the meter in for us because O&M will be using this as well. And so, yeah, about 1,000 gallons a day is what we're doing, and we'll do more if we need to.
Okay, and are you going to be putting down ground cover to keep it? What are
Yes,
you
ma'am.
doing now?
Thank you, great question. I'm sorry, I meant to mention that. We do plan on hydro seeding taking place very soon. And so that will give a little bit of grass cover to keep that down. Like I said, again, we have put in the stone travel paths for driving. There'll be more of those that go around the perimeter of the site.
What type of ground cover?
Obviously, number 3, stone.
No, I mean on the grass, when you put the grass down.
What kind of, what we talking about, Ron?
We're gonna do an initial annual, we talked to the engineer of record, they recommended annual rye. And then we will use that with attack fire. That will be initially, that's in addition to the measure called for the plan. So we're gonna add a change order for that, if that work to be done.
So it'll come up quick.
Oh yeah, it'll pop in a week.
Yeah.
Right. And we're gonna be watering the site, so that'll also help.
Perfect. It doesn't dry out.
At that point, there will be some of that will get destroyed throughout the
yeah.
process, but we'll end up still having probably 40% stability by the time we're done for our seeding in the fall. That is also required, and then we'll have another seeding probably in the spring for whatever doesn't stabilize up at that point. So hopefully by the spring of next year, we'll be probably 85 or so % stabilized. And that doesn't count, that's just in the site. They have a different request for a specific wildflower seed on the road, so we're just talking about inside of the site, in between, where the operation is, and then the budding neighbors.
Just to hold it down now, preventive, okay.
I also want to make, I can't find, looking forward on this right now, but in regard to,
Excuse me. The microphone can't hear you clearly from back there, so if you want to expand.
Which point would you want to make?
just to say that in the notes on the stormwater section of the plans, it had a request for no chemicals to be used.
So, and as he's mentioning, so you can hear, there was part of the stormwater permit that requested no chemicals to be used. So hence my reservation about trying to put down a pallet and going with water instead, so. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions. I had some contact via email. I had mentioned earlier that there was complaints about noise and dust. And my understanding that the noise, you've already discussed dust. I mean, I know it's an ongoing problem. There was a complaint about noise.
Yes.
Has that been addressed?
We have concluded the wood chipping activities that are there. There will be noise of equipment operating within the work hours that we do, but the noise should be very much mitigated now that we're not grinding up trees and anything like that.
Okay.
And much significant reduction in decibels.
There was a complaint that I wrote to somebody about. There was an early start. Somebody showed up before 7 a.m. and I assume that that's been taken care of?
Yes, ma'am, it has, and there was a miscommunication. They're supposed to idle equipment for about 10 minutes before 7 o'clock, but we're waiting now, we're starting it up at 7, not earlier than that. No work takes place until 7 a.m. So any activity we heard earlier, that was to warm the machines up, and so we're making sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay, and I had received a request quite a while ago. You wanted to go from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Are you working those hours?
Well, we're 7 to 5 most of the time, but we wanted to have that availability.
Okay.
For tree clearers to get that activity done and out of the way.
Okay, understood. Anything else from committee members? Mr. Ferry?
What's that? We can work.
We're trying to find the hours.
So we are looking at weekend work. Mr. Kusuli has asked us not to work on the 20th, so we'll have any minimal impacts of any of the Saturday. He has a party plan, and then the 3rd, we'll have a party plan. So we're going to work around his plan so that we're not disrupting. So,
Okay, before you actually start weekend work, would you let Mrs. Grassi know? She's the office manager who pretty much coordinates everything. And you could send her an email and say that you're planning to do Sunday work or Saturday work, whatever you're talking about. And remember, the hours change on the weekends as far as start.
Trying to find out, we couldn't find those hours.
Saturday, is it 8 o'clock?
Yeah, the planning board is preparing an official email to the developer, so that should be going out this afternoon.
Is it 8, not before 8 o'clock?
Right.
And over by, is it 4?
On Saturdays,
Yeah.
4 p.m.
Okay. Is Sunday work allowed?
I believe Sunday work is not allowed.
Okay, all right.
we haven't planned on that, to be honest, too, so thank you.
Okay, so when you hear from the planning board and you're actually going to do it, if you would send an email to Roz and she can let the committee know, so that if we hear that somebody calls in and says, hey, they're up here working, what's going on? We can say, we're aware of it and they had permission to work on the Saturday or whatever.
Sure, we're glad to do that, and I also sent Mr. Fasuli a notice that we're going to work on Saturday, so he knows that.
Okay, Mr. Christopherly, do you wish to speak?
I do.
I don't want to cut you off, but I'm watching that clock.
All right. First of all, I appreciate, Clearway and the Sigma guys for being here and, some of the work that's been done so far. So some of the things that I'm confused about is who at the town is responsible, ultimately responsible.
Or,
Is it stormwater, is it water health, is it planning?
depends on what the problem is.
Okay, so that, again, was naive to that fact and didn't understand. So talked to Mr. Hedigiar, talked to the building as well. So that was some of the confusion when this was all happening. So just to kind of lighten some of the situation, the dust, again, I understand the drought. The dust was problematic, but it was probably the least of the problem. The big problem was coming from the tree grinding.
Noise?
Noise was, I mean, I had 11-year-old boys that were scared. I mean, it was crazy. It sounded like a jet engine coming through. You know, we were having a pool party, summertime, and so on. You know, just as of yesterday, we literally had pieces of pine tree raining down on our property. You know, I have asthma. I think there's some concern with the environmental conditions that are there. You know, as I understand it, the organizations here do not have any means of measuring particulate matters in the air. I mean, literally, it was totally visible. You know, both Roz and Todd came to the site and saw that. Actually, the gentleman from the Taunton Gazette came to my house. He had to leave after a few minutes because it was affecting his breathing. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the long-term situation. My house, as they noted, is very dirty. Literally, you know, a layer of dust on skylights, anything horizontal and vertical. Cars are filthy. I'm actually very concerned about my pool at this point. I can't get the staining out of the nice white stairs. You know, so again, I've actually reached out to Clearway and my insurance company. You know, hopefully they'll be providing an insurance binder. I think that's something, you know, you represent the planning board. I think that's one of the things that the town should consider, you know, as having and providing accessibility to the abutters. My insurance company's actually asked that I be named as an additional insured on their policy based on their concerns with longevity of this project.
The insurance for the builder or the proponent, the contractor?
Correct. They actually requested it from the owner of the property, which, you know, based on leasing, these folks are the temporary owner for the next 30 years, or at least 20 years, based on the way the deed.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you right now because I'm getting up onto the 1:30. Just an aside, gentlemen, my understanding is that you are not going to make a presentation, you're going to ask for continuance, is that true?
We could give the board an update. There was an issue with abutters notification, so I don't think we'll be able to have.
All right, we're not going to have a full hearing.
That's right.
Are you willing to, after you make a brief presentation or just update, because the presentation should actually have to happen at the public hearing. So are you amenable to an extension as far as, okay, so Mr. Christofouli, if you don't mind waiting, you think you can get this done in 10 minutes or less? Okay, so you will come back to the podium. And gentlemen, if you want to stay, fine. If you have to leave, I understand it, but we will return to, we'll have Mr. Christofouli come back to the podium because we aren't going to have that public hearing. Hunters Hill, it's a housing development.
So do you need a motion to table William Street and then we'll bring it back up after?
Yes.
Over? So I'll make a motion that we table Clearway Solar.
There a second?
I second.
I'm going to go to the roll call vote. Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling? Mr. Aguirre? Mr. Ferry? Hello, Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Nancy Goulart, aye. All right, you're up.
Thank you.
Just state your name for the recording, please.
It's Evan Watson with W Engineering, representing applicant Winthrop Homes. Last time we met, it was again, we didn't have the public hearing, but we did let the board know where we're at. And then since then, we scheduled a site walk, and we went on a site walk. A few members of the board went with us, and we were able to see what type of construction was already done, which was essentially what we're planning to continue out through the site on the modification. After that meeting, we received input from the planning board's review consultant, Mr. Shaheen, who gave us a list of ways that he wants to comply a little bit better with the subdivision rules and regulations, minor edits, nothing that changed the overall design, nothing that changed anything that we've been looking at so far. So that's been responded to by us. Response letter and a new set of plans to the planning board that we're expecting to go over tonight with the planning board. We have not received any input back from them as to reviewing our response. We're also waiting for the peer review from the Conservation Commission, from niche engineering. I corresponded with him, I said, hey, we have a hearing tomorrow night, it'd be nice to have your input by then. He's hoping to get it to us this week, so we may or may not have that, but that is more of the review that is pertinent to the stormwater and stormwater standards that this board is really concerned about there. Mr. Shaheen did, of the planning board, give a cursory review of our stormwater report. He asked that we add a few items to the O&M plan, which we told him we would do once we got the audit review. So we haven't given this board an update on the plans yet, only because they're being reviewed by two separate entities, and I want to have both of those reviews responded to, so that we have one set that's basically responsive to everybody before we give it along. So my goal really tonight was just to let the board know where we're at with that, and then see, obviously we have, having too much input here, but if anything came up during the site walk that anybody wanted to bring up, or if there was anything beyond the reviews from the other boards that we were looking to see, that I can be preparing in the meantime. Or any other questions?
Yeah, for those of you that were at the site, do any of you have any questions? We do have meeting notes, site visits we take meeting notes. Obviously, they're not official minutes, but we do have notes when we do these visits. So whether it's somebody who went out to the site or somebody who just looked at the meeting notes, are there any questions from any board members about what has happened so far? I think we're waiting for the next step. So we need to set a date. Now, our next regular meeting, excuse me, is September the 21st, 1 PM in this room. Will that give you ample time to take care of whatever notifications have to go?
Sure.
Okay, does the 21st make sense? You think that's going to be okay?
Yeah, we don't need any longer than that. So
Okay, and we'll set it again for 1:30. So the meeting will start at 1, and we will schedule the hearing for 1:30. So I need a motion to continue.
Had a motion that we opened this, did we?
Well, no, because it's not the hearing.
Didn't notify the abutters.
Right, but didn't
So they're giving us an extension to go over the,
Yeah,
whatever.
the newspaper
Oh.
was issued, like it was advertised in the newspaper, but we neglected to send out the notifications to the abutters, so.
So the hearing's not open, he's giving us extension to go over 30 days to open the hearing.
So would we need to re-advertise, or?
I think we need to open the hearing and continue it because the abutters weren't notified. Otherwise, they're gonna have to put it in the paper again.
That's what my.
That's how I understand
it.
Okay,
It was advertised that we should open the hearing and then continue based off of that to that meeting. And then I'll-
okay, then I need a motion to open the hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Is there a second?
A second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Pilling? Agia? Mr. Ferry? Mr. Mello? Mr. Wood? Mrs. Goulart? All ayes. The purpose of the continuance is has to be notification of abutters. We are looking at a date of Wednesday, September the 21st for continuance of the public hearing. The Hunters Hill. And is there a motion to continue the hearing? Excuse me.
Can I just, you mentioned that there were meeting notes that were taken. Is that something that I can be copied on as well?
Yes, we have those.
Yeah, as soon as the board votes to accept them.
Okay, perfect. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Grassi can email those out.
Yeah, by the
Excuse me.
21st, I expect that we're gonna have the planning board wrapped up, and then we'll have definitely we'll have the input from conservation and a response back to them by then. So we should have a pretty good meeting with you folks next month.
I failed to introduce to you two new members who you've probably met in other meetings. But Mr. Charles Mello is the new representative from the Conservation Commission, and Robert Woods is the new representative for the Planning Board. Those appointments were made within the last month by the Board of Selectmen. All the other players are the same. Is there a motion to continue the hearing to September 21st, 1:30 PM?
So move.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Billing?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Mello? Mr. Woods?
Aye.
But just make a note that Mr. Ferry was not present at the vote.
Yes, I'll have.
Okay, perfect.
And I will also send you my extension request.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, make a motion. I would like a motion to take agenda item, resume agenda item 5A, update Clearway Solar Project 1420, 1522 William Street off the table so that we can continue.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Hello?
Aye.
Did we lose
Aye.
Mr. Ferry? I saw him come in. Yeah, he's outside. Mr. Wood, Mrs. Goulart is also an aye. Mr. Christopherly, if you would come back, please.
Thank you for waiting.
Okay, just to continue, I know that the planning board is in the process of looking at a bylaw change. So I certainly think there are some things that the bylaws need to consider. You may remember that I had that change tabled at town meeting. Obviously, distance, anybody that's visited the property, both from the construction crew as well as the town, as well as the Taunton Gazette, were amazed at how close this is. The town allows for a 50-foot buffer between properties. This is at 100.
Okay, is this planning board that you're,
No, I'm
Proposing-
providing it, as general information, because all you folks are involved in this, from an approval.
okay, except I understand what your concerns are, but if the bylaw that you're talking about is specifically directed at something the planning board controls, I just want that pointed out. The Stormwater Committee is in the process of reviewing its own stormwater bylaw and regulations. So if you have a chance, get a copy, or Mrs. Grassi can email it, and go through it, because if, we'll be looking for citizens' input, and feel free to print it out, mark it up, and give it back to her.
That was additional information.
Yeah, but since we're talking about the work we have to do, that would be helpful
The
also.
property, as you know, is the watershed, the water tower's there. I have a well, so I'm certainly concerned about any, runoff or any other issues associated with the work that's being done there. We're noticing the water's a little bit brown. Again, there is manganese in the water, but it seems to be, since the project started, it seems to be a little bit worse. And again, back to some of the other stuff, I would certainly request, and again, insurance companies will get involved as needed. Those are things for future consideration for approving these projects. I think in large from all the departments is to ensure that both the town and the abutters are protected for any consequential damage there. The other stuff, start times, 7 a.m. is pretty early in the summertime. Both my girlfriend and my son are on school vacation. You guys started at 7:01 today. They get going. The other thing I would note, the idling, trucks idling there 30, 40 minutes. Massachusetts state law is 5 minutes. So I think, again, folks that are not from the state of Massachusetts and out of town need to make sure that they're very familiar with the rules and regulations that we govern ourselves by. I'm open to any questions you have. You're certainly welcome to come visit my property. And I would certainly hope that each one of you has visited that site, 21 acres of Dighton Woods gone. It looks like they're gonna put up a Lowe's or a Target there. It is, again, damaging to the town. And I do understand there's plenty of other solar projects in the wings. Again, I hope the town would rally to ensure that we're protecting both the town and the townspeople going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions of me?
I just want to point out that both Mr. Christopherly and Clearway, they've been very communicative with emails and stuff, and it's an open line of communication there.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we're just kind of watching the show, we're not engaging in the conversations unless we need to, but it's been a very open communication, so.
Okay, all right. Do you have any comments, Mr. Cruz?
No, ma'am, I don't, thank you.
I would like to say, just for the record,
Yes, go ahead.
as a planning board member, a 50-foot buffer zone is what's required by law. And, you know, when they were proposing this particular solar array, I'll call it, we had to fight tooth and nail to get 100 feet from Mr. Christopherly. And 100 feet is really nothing either. But our hands are tied by regulations. And we're trying to change those, but it's almost impossible, you know, and Mrs. Boiselet, is the same problem happened there. You know, and when you talk about another 50 feet, you're talking about a whole nother row of solar panels, right, which comes out some money. And they're not concerned about the town of Dayton. And, you know, I feel bad for Frank, for Mrs. Boiselet, for any abutter next to a solar farm or array, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, we have regulations that we have to follow.
I mean, I would call it a power.
I mean, we really tried to get 200-foot buffer over there. We tried and we got shot down. And it was almost like pulling teeth.
That was 3 years.
Yeah, and we tried.
I attended every single meeting, every conservation meeting for 3 years.
You know, and I did receive other phone calls last week about the dust on people that own homes on the other side of Wellington Street were getting dust in their yards, on their screens, on their cars, in their pools. And I did have other phone calls pertaining to water usage that Mrs. Catavia talked about, because we're in a drought. People in Dayton can't irrigate their own lawn, so they were wondering if, you know, that water that you were using is metered water or not, and you said it is, so that's good. But, you know, the average homeowner in the town of Dayton can't water their lawn. So, you know,
If they had run some sort of water cannon, it was really the tree chipping.
yeah,
I mean, there was chunks of wood.
right.
in the air. You could see it.
I would love to expand the buffer zone for any future developments, but I'm just one
Or also,
person.
there's some, you know, cases in Massachusetts where solar farms, you know, again, the farm word is friendly, they're really power plants, right? You're generating electricity. So there is some case law now happening where solar farms are considered manufacturing and they don't belong in residential areas, so.
There's a big one by the Bourne Rotary yesterday that I went by and it said solar farm. So, you know,
How close would you say they were chipping to your property?
Well, it started about 250 feet.
And you were still getting,
When they were at the far edge of it, it was still rolling my way, even with the southwest wind. I mean, I'll show you the pictures. I mean, I've taken plenty of pictures, emptying my pool daily, you know, to backwash it. It's black water, brown water coming through there. Yesterday was the second day that they were reasonably close, and it was just raining down. You know,
I don't know if anyone else has been to Frank's house, but he has a beautiful home, 800 feet off the road that he bought years ago for the privacy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gorgeous. And now, got a solar farm. You know,
are they putting up any type of foliage there?
Yes, ma'am, we are going, if you'd like for me to address that, I can, because I would like.
I
to
am.
address
Yeah, we did in the meeting that we had with the Board of Health, they, you know, made amends to say that if there is additional plantings that need to happen, that work with me or, you know, slatting. Again, plans have changed, you know, since it was originally approved. Do you know if there is fencing around the retention pond, or is that going to be open?
It's required.
Required.
But it's inside the perimeter.
It's also depends on the depth
Okay.
and how fast it drains.
Mrs. Boiselet can tell you about screening.
Yeah, they die. They don't abide by the width that it's supposed to be, 10 feet on center. It's more like 17 to 20 feet on center. Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to my original question, who owns this? You know, when this is done, am I the police for the town of Dayton, looking out my office window? or are you folks, some of you who are elected, some of you who are appointed?
Did you wish to address the vegetation plantings?
Sure.
Or screen?
Thank you. Again, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience to Mr. Christouli, excuse me. And we're doing everything we can to mitigate that. We will be planting an enormous amount of trees in that area, and we're gonna have to replant them. We know that. So we know we're gonna plant, and some are gonna die off, but we have to keep coming back and doing that until they stabilize and come in. The intention is that with that implementation of vegetation, it would block there being a view. And then also with the fence, where we've offered again, and he's amenable, we're gonna put slats in the fence along there. So that's again, a visual barrier so that you're not looking out directly at the array. So that's what we're trying to do as well. We are going to do, I should say, we're going to do that as well. So, and we'll continue to work. I do want you to know that we want to be a good neighbor. We're not in here to not, to be a bad neighbor. And we do actually care about the town of Dayton because we're here and we're going to be here for 25 years, Mr. Woods. So please accept my apology that, it might not have come across that way, but that is our intention, is to be a good neighbor and to be a good part of the community. So we'll continue to endeavor that with all of our efforts, I promise you.
Okay. Is there, Mr. Ferry?
I don't have any questions inside the project, everything that we discussed. I'd like to have a conversation about the traffic flow onto William Street.
Go ahead.
So I was contacted yesterday from Clearway and also the police department. The traffic plan is supposed to be take a right when you come out of the project.
Yes, sir.
And we're identifying that's a real problem for the heavy equipment and also for the traffic flow itself. I mean, for everyone that's coming out, especially when there's a detail there.
Yes.
The detailed question, who has the authority to override that, if it can be override. Check with the chief to be. He's in agreement that we should consider eliminating that right turn only, or at least leave it to the discretion of the detail officer on site for the flow of the traffic. These guys were not part of that plan. Do you remember why that right turn only was there? Yeah, I think it may have been there for the stacking of vehicles on Rougeau's and the potential of walking between.
What I remember was they felt that by controlling the traffic that way, it would be a smoother flow.
Right. But now we have heavy equipment forced into our community
And
and figuring out how to turn around.
Right, and I remember that saying if a truck comes the wrong direction, they got to go somewhere and turn around. And obviously, a tractor trailer is loaded with equipment or dirt or whatever, or panels. If it's got to go somewhere and turn around, how far do you go to turn around and where are you going to end up? I'll call you in just a minute. But I think that was the intent, but obviously, now that there is truck traffic and heavy equipment, and if it's creating some problem with the flow, as observed by the police department, is this in your area, or is it someone else that should be involved in this discussion?
I mean, I believe it would fall to me, just because I'm the construction manager on site, and.
Oh, you want to come up to the podium, please?
I believe it would fall to me. I'm the construction manager on site, and I've seen the trucks try to make their returns onto that street. And the first thing that happened when the police detail came out, they said, we have authority to direct traffic in the most safe manner possible, and they all recommended it was to the left, as did the truck drivers, the civil construction people who do a lot of this work. I've witnessed it myself, and I believe that going left is the most appropriate thing to do here. And it's, I don't know if we need to make an amendment to the traffic plan that you guys have approved.
What I'm going
I don't know what that process.
All right, so what I'm going to suggest on this particular issue, we will get in touch with the police department, come up with a date and a time, not this full committee. I'll be there, Mr. Ferry will be there. Mr. Aguirre, do you want to be present? Sure. All right, Mr. Pilling? All right, so we will not have a quorum. Mrs. Grassi, if you're available, but we will Mr. Ferry, if you'd get in touch with the police department, look at your own schedule. Let's come up with a date, work that out with the police department, and we will schedule a meeting here in this building so that you can come and bring whoever should be there. In the meantime, the police will direct traffic in the safest way possible. But since there was an actual traffic plan, it needs to be amended. As a matter of fact, I'm the one that raised the questions at the Stormwater meeting about the control of traffic, because my concern was not so much William Street. It was accessing the back property through a major business area with foot traffic and all that. So anyhow, that all got worked out. So as long as it's understood that until we have that meeting and things get worked out and the traffic plan gets amended, it'll be at the discretion of the officer on duty to direct traffic. And if you would let the truckers and everybody else on site know that you just follow the instruction of the police officer on duty, and whatever direction he says to turn, that's where they'll go. And if they happen to be coming, quote, the wrong way, unquote, down or up William Street, they need to just stop where the police officer is and not go to try to turn around somewhere or whatever, okay?
We will absolutely defer to the officer's direction. That's what we've been doing, honestly, Mr. York. So we'd like to continue to do that. And we did have some concerns that they were turning to the right, then having to go into the neighborhood to turn around and come back out. And so obviously we do want to avoid that impact. So thank you for that, and we'll get on submitting a revision to the traffic.
Okay, we'll get the meeting set up as soon as possible. It will, as I said, it'll be held in this building. We'll let you know the time and that. We will not have a quorum of the Stormwater Committee there. So what we will do will be similar to what we do for site visits, in that there will be meeting notes, not official minutes. But the meeting notes get filed with the minutes. And it's really good information, like who was at that meeting when we talked about this. It's quite often in a site visit or in this type of meeting, it'll be, hey, we need to take this to the committee, which means it'll be on the next agenda. So those notes serve as a good reminder too, okay? So, Mr. Ferry, I'll leave that up to you, to come up with a couple of dates, see what we can work out with the police department. And we'll go from there, and we'll be sure that Roz knows, Mrs. Grassi knows, yes.
I would like to note that I do agree with your assessment in the initial phase about trucks going in and out of that nursery with active, people coming in and out. That has actually been, I've been paying close attention to that. I've been kind of monitoring that road as far as traffic goes, and it's not in the busy season for the nursery, obviously, which is helpful, but it's been very minimal impact, and the guys on the site that are driving around are aware. All the truck drivers come in and get briefed on a safety briefing to be aware as they're coming up to follow signs, and they're also communicating on headsets with the other drivers on the site, so we're not having a bunch of.
And my major concern was because I would be one of the offenders. I come out of the store part and turn left. If I'm in the north parking lot, I just cross the road because that's what I've always done. And they even put the location of the barriers got moved so that I just couldn't come bombing out of there and cross. I had to kind of go around something as a reminder. It's, look both ways before you cross the street, even though it wasn't truly a street. But I have been up there at different times. And of course, with the heat and all that, during the day, the customer traffic is relatively light, but I also pay attention to see what people are doing, because some do park in the north parking lot, and I'll call it the barrier, kind of gives them a heads up, because of course we don't see the big trucks during business hours of the shop, but I think it has made people aware of, there is traffic. You may not see it, but every time you come here, you've got to be aware.
I do have some extra personnel that I brought onto the site to help with some of that, where I can put them where I feel they're needed most based on time of day or activity coming in and out of the site. So So it isn't a big, I mean, obviously, safety is a very paramount concern, especially, people coming in that are not necessarily on the site, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of out of town, there's a lot of out-of-state traffic goes there because people tend to check, because I do it myself, if I'm going to be into an area, are there any farm stands around here? And whether it's vegetables or plants, everything comes up, and I like to go to places like that. And the other thing I'm not sure if you're aware of, but when we approved the traffic control plan, it was stated and reinforced and clearly understood, if there is a day or days when a police detail has not been ordered because you weren't expecting whatever, if a police officer goes by and sees something, that police officer has the authority to shut everything down and say, get a detail up here. So that was right from the beginning. We talked about this, so.
And that's been understood.
Okay.
We've been very diligent about making sure the police are informed, and they've been great about providing a detail.
Yeah.
Every time we have trucks coming, we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, okay, and I just wanted you to know that on the town side, it will happen.
And to that point as well, there's been a few times where either the detail officer had to leave sick or had to come out early or something, and in any of those instances where we still have trucks that are coming and going, I myself and then one other person will go out, so we have 2 flaggers out on the road to stop traffic to help with that situation, so.
Okay.
I had to earn money, I had to escort a truck. So, there you go.
Okay, does the committee have any more questions or anything for the gentleman? Mrs. Foley, did you want to speak?
Just kind of, referring to your meeting notes on site, February 23rd, 2021. Any truckers on the site are to be notified of the traffic plan. Now, there was a lot of truck traffic on Wellington Street. It was actually from a wood chip truck trying to back up at the intersection of Smith Street, certainly pretty dangerous. And also, some stuff that came up. Any of the clearway or the signal folks are prohibited from doing any traffic detail or directing traffic. If that's needed, you have to call for detail. And that was outlined in your minute notes on February 23rd, 2021. The other thing I would note is changing in the pattern. I think it makes sense to take a right and head south. There's a lot of kids that live in that area right across from the farm. School's starting in a few weeks. I think that should be taken into consideration. I believe Chief McDonald was at that meeting and
We did discuss the closing and opening of school. I remember that.
And I think there's also stuff in that minute notes that talk about delivery hours, and Rougeau's is to be closed during that time to avoid any of that traffic moving between their parking lots. So again, things that aren't up to par based on, what we've discussed needs continued eyes on the project. Thank you.
Are we all set? Okay, thank you for coming in. We will be in touch with you about that meeting with public safety to talk about modification of the traffic flow plan. Okay?
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna go back to the regular order for the agenda. Agenda item 4A, review, discuss, act, Wellington Acres.
I spoke with Attorney John Mitchell today just to get a status update. Nothing has changed. Since our site visit, they emailed John,
The homeowners,
no, the attorney for Lopes, John Stajak. Okay, so they're waiting for his response to the homeowners docs and
I've got the notes sitting on my computer. I need that mailing address again, because it was in a separate email, because I've got to request documents that Mr. Pilling said we didn't have. And I've got the letter, but I don't have the address. Somehow they got separated. I know it was a separate email, and I wanted to know the name, who this should really be addressed to. And so if you can find that email, just send it to me again, please.
I can, but do you mean the homeowners docs because that's what Todd was looking for?
Did they come in?
No.
No, he gave me, one email gave me a list of things to ask for. And then I wrote back and said, who should this be addressed to? And you sent me the second one. That email I can't find. I have the list
Okay.
of items.
The list that you're talking about, it went to the attorney for the homeowner association, and then he forwarded it to the developer, and the developer's trying to provide those documents.
So I don't have to send the letter? Oh, I didn't know that. All right, the last,
He told us that just before the meeting started.
okay, fine. So I don't need it. That's one more thing off my list. I just want to quickly read, just for the benefit, the site visit, this should be changed to site visit meeting notes. It says minutes.
For,
Wellington Acres, July 19th, okay? I just noticed that.
okay,
So from the Stormwater Committee, Mr. Aguirre, Mr. Pilling, and I, and then other staff, Mrs. Grassi and Mrs. Caldonia, the conservation agent. Also, Attorney John Mitchell, representing the Homeowners Association, and Catherine Pavo, who is president of the Homeowners Association. We were there at 9 a.m. on July 19th. Discussion, Building Commissioner James Aguirre stated there are 2 basins that will require stormwater management. The committee walked out to view drainage basin number 2 and the common septic field. There was overgrown vegetation in and around the drainage basin, and the field had large vegetation growing in it. After a perimeter walk of the drainage basin, it was noted that de-fencing needs to be reattached and the outflow pipe is broken off. Stormwater agent Todd Pilling explained to Attorney Mitchell and Mrs. Pavo that there should be requirements for inspections and reporting defined in the Homeowners Association documents. There will need to be a Title V inspection of the shared septic system, pumping of each home's 1,500 gallon septic tank, and reports that need to be filed with the state and the town. Agent Pilling and Commissioner Aguirre reviewed the septic as-built plan and noted there was no high vent pipe on the septic field. The vent pipe was 3 feet high, and it should have been 13 feet high. Mr. Pilling explained that he will need to review the homeowner's documents before he will be able to comment further on the status of the drainage basin or the common septic system. Building Commissioner James Aguirre stated that the locus of the septic field will need to be removed. The locus of the septic field will need to be removed. I think it means the roots need to be removed because it could damage the D boxes. Drainage basin number 1 was visited, and it was noted that the opening in the fence was on private property. The gate will need to be relocated to another gate, and another gate will need to be installed at the front area roadside. And that was so that emergency vehicles could access it right from the road, as opposed to trying to drive over somebody's lawn and garden and everything else to get to it. So that's just some notes from the site visit. Is there anything else on Wellington Acres? Okay, hearing none. We'll have this on the agenda for next month to see if the documents have come in or we get any kind of an update on that.
okay.
And agenda item 4B, review, discuss, act, update, railroad bed cleanup. So we sent a letter to Mr. Ralph Enos, which is the property to the south of the major site of dumping. And he was instructed to clean up the non-organic matter that was seen, like with some broken windows and wood and glass. He was instructed not to remove any of the organic matter and to notify the board when the cleanup had been completed, and if he wishes to compost his yard waste, grass clippings, that sort of thing, he's got to find another location. So he was given until the 1st of October to comply, so that's where we are with that. In the case of the other property that we accessed and inspected from Pleasant Street, Dr. Vort, he was advised to hold off doing anything because we intend to contact Bristol County Mosquito Control to take a look at it, because the question really is about the organic matter that is there, how much needs to be removed, and what else needs to be done. So Mr. Ferry, have you contacted Bristol County Mosquito Control on this one?
No.
Okay, could you do that, please? Ask them to come down and take a look at it, and give us an idea what they recommend or what they're willing to do. Bristol County might be able to clean this up.
And their extent would be as far north as Kuchenbauer.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so from the south boundary of Dr. Vaught to the north boundary, which is the Kuchenbauer property.
Yes, I believe they ended at the beginning of Mr. Enos's or Mr. Hall's property. That's remaining is what's left.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions on that railroad bed cleanup project that we've got going? Hearing none, okay, this will be on the agenda for next month also for an update. Agenda item 4C, review, discuss, act, Hart Street drainage update. I received an email with pictures attached that showed stormwater coming out of a driveway. It looked like a gravel or dirt driveway running onto Hart Street. And I asked Mr. Ferry if he could take a look at it because it reminded me of something similar we dealt with many years ago, where there was a problem with drainage on Hart Street due to, I'll call it the high side of the road and water coming across the road. So, Mr. Ferry, if you can provide any information you may have.
So that residence is aware, that is there. The water needs to be encouraged to get to the side of the driveway, and that these ditches right on the wrong side of the driveway, so the water does not run out to the roadway. So it looks like the roadway is driveway needs to be made if he's going to remain with a gravel driveway.
Okay, okay. If he decides to pave it,
Same thing.
it's got to direct the water into the,
Right, it needs a crown on it, so the water goes to the edges.
and goes into the town drainage system?
Right.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay. Have you had any conversation with him about the driveway? Okay. Mrs. Grassi, put this on the agenda for the next month for an update.
Okay.
I'm going to propose that I talk with Mr. Ferry and we come up with some kind of a letter to the property owner indicating that the driveway needs to have some grading to direct the stormwater to the sides so that will go into the town drainage system. Is that basically what we're talking about? Okay, so would somebody make a motion to have me send the letter from the Stormwater Committee that I just described about grading of the driveway?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second discussion.
Yes, go ahead.
Is it only one driveway?
I only saw a picture with one driveway.
But do we know if it's only one driveway? Because if it's more than one driveway, we should send letters to whomever has a driveway that potentially can do the same thing.
Okay, Mr. Ferry, you've been up there. Is it more than one driveway? Should we send letters to more than one property owner? Are there,
I'm gonna go more driving direction.
That's all I'm asking.
I believe the others have been paid accordingly.
oh, so then there aren't other gravel?
Not with this issue, no. With this grade issue, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so I guess just a note that we will send a letter to any property owner that is determined needs to do something to grading of the driveway. I guess that's the best we can do, just in case we go up there and say, here's another problem, all right? So this will allow more than one letter to be sent, and I won't have to come back to the board each month and say, I want to send another letter. Okay, does that work? Amendment? Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion. Yes, Mr. Burnett.
One driveway, one
It's only one driveway. And my concern about it is the silt. The whole lot hasn't been stabilized in 6 years. Anytime you get a runoff, you get silt into the wetlands on my property. And the drainage ditch where the water's supposed to go is, the grass now is 3 feet high, so it acts like a filter. But you can see by the pictures that the amount of silt that ran down from that property into the drainage ditch, which has been determined to be an intermittent stream, couldn't filter it all out before it got to my property.
Is this a drainage ditch that belongs to the town of Dayton?
So, yes, it is.
Okay, so this is gonna be part of, when we take a look at it, we'll take a look at what the letter's gonna ask the,
Please don't clean the drainage ditch, it's acting like a filter.
what happens to the ditch is going to be based on what Mr. Ferry determines is in the best interests of drainage and whatever else that needs to be done relative to handling the flow of water. We are only addressing water from the driveway, getting it to flow into existing drainage system. This is what we had to do years ago when this issue, not this issue, a similar issue came up, and there was a homeowner who was very, very concerned that his property was going to be inundated because of water coming from, I'll call it the high side, the north side of Hot Street, crossing the road and flowing into the south side. I have not heard from that gentleman since we initially dealt with the problem. To the best of your knowledge, is that okay? What's down there is working? I know they built other homes there since. Do you know the property I'm referring to?
No,
Raposa.
no, they had, he'll tell you it's still a problem. No, there's no other problems I'm aware of.
All right, so he's not, we haven't heard from him. I saw him last night at the store and said hello. Other than that, we haven't had complaints.
No.
Okay, so anyhow, that's what we're talking about, is handling the rainwater that comes down the driveway, okay?
It does go into the drainage ditch now.
But we've got to get all of it to go into the drainage ditch. We don't want it crossing the road.
It does now. It all goes into the drainage ditch, which is a swale, which has been determined to be an intermittent stream. It does go in, all goes into that drainage ditch right now. No problem.
And continues into the drain system?
Yes, then it goes underneath Hot Street, and it comes onto my property, all silted up, and it stays in my pond.
So the letter isn't gonna fix the problem, if that's an accurate statement.
All the water that comes off that property goes into that drainage ditch that runs along the side of Hart Street. It travels down from the driveway, it travels down about 600 feet, goes underneath the road, and goes directly into my property. And the silt stays there as the water.
Mr. Ferry, is this accurate?
Yes.
Is there something that can be done to direct the water into the storm drain so that it flows down the side of Hot Street and ends up eventually? If whatever drainage heads to the river.
Are you referring to bypass his property, divert the water?
Well, all I'm saying is, if there is a drainage system in place, again, I'm thinking about the problem we had further down the road. So the water is going somewhere. So the question is, if it's in a drainage ditch, can it be tied into existing stormwater drainage system so it doesn't go onto anyone's property? It stays in the system and eventually ends up in the river.
No.
All the water on the side of that hill runs through my property. It would be super if it was clean. It's not. That house has been under construction for 6.5 years. And every time we have a heavy rainstorm, I get the silt settling in my pond. I took it upon myself to have it measured at a 1-year period. And I turned that over to the Conservation Commission. Oh, it's still doing the same thing.
Okay, so I misunderstood the pictures I saw. I thought what we were dealing with, because this issue has come before this committee a number of times, and it was left that anything that could be done was done, and that this committee and also the Conservation Commission said, we can't do anything else. I thought we were talking about something new. That's what maybe triggered the thought about the other problem we had. But if you're saying this is just a continuation of what's going on, then I've got to say to you, Mr. Fernet, I'm sorry, we can't go any further. I thought we were dealing with something new. I didn't realize this is just a continuation.
Storms in January, 2 storms in February, and one last week.
Okay, I understand now, but I'm sorry.
Okay.
Again, it wouldn't have been on the agenda unless I thought I was dealing with something new, and it triggered the thought of the problem that we had years ago with a situation with new construction and somebody on the south side of the road and everything else.
Still under construction.
Okay, all right.
Actually, there's a new piece of construction going on there that I don't understand. But they bulldoze. They scrape the dirt from the back of the property and they pile it up in the front of the property. And there were pictures of that I sent you also.
Okay, Mr. Frenet, again, I'm sorry. If I had understood it was a continuation, I would have had to tell you we're not going to take it up again because we've already discussed it over and over. And I know that I've been at Concom meetings when they've expressed the same thing. So I'm sorry. It's not a new problem. That was my mistake. I misinterpreted it.
It has to be a new problem.
And no, I'm saying it was my mistake. I misinterpreted what I was looking at because, again, it triggered the thoughts of something Mr. Ferry and I had to deal with years ago. And that worked out pretty much okay because we didn't hear from the person. But in any case, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say this is the end of this discussion.
Okay.
Moving on to the next agenda item. So the second, would you withdraw the second, please? And would you withdraw the motion that you made?
I will withdraw the motion.
So Mrs. Grassi, this motion, second motion didn't happen. It's gone. Okay? Agenda item 4D, open meeting law complaint. Yes.
I make a motion that we take 5C out of order, Brook Street Solar, as we have one person in the audience for that.
Okay, there's a motion to take 5C out of order. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Pilling? Mr. Aguirre? Mr. Ferry? Mr. Mello? Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. Goulart? Aye. Mr. Pilling, you're on.
I didn't have anything to say about it, just we had one person in the crowd. There's somebody in the crowd, and instead of making her sit here for 6 more items, I figured we'd put her in front.
Okay, so the last thing I heard, the last communication I had with Mr. Hafez, and I had seen copies of emails, so I'm going to ask Mr. Aguirre to speak up also. But the last communication was that I had with him that I remember was if you have the, get the basins, plural, constructed according to the original approved plan. His response came back, the general contractor has been told to excuse me, let me back up. The first communication was Grasshopper told the subcontractor responsible for the basins to dig them up and build them according to the original approved plan, because anything else, like a modification, is going to the planning board and we're not going to deal with it, which means further delays, obviously. So that's why they were going to order the subcontractor to dig up the basins. Then I was told that the subcontractor said they're not going to do it because it's too much work and it's not going to work. And I said to Mr. Hafez, I believe this was part of a phone call, I said, wait a minute, the time to object to the plan was when he first saw the plan. Too late now, the plan got approved, and to say it's not gonna work doesn't make any sense. So Mr. Hafez said they notified the general contractor to notify the subcontractor. They were either to dig him up and build him to approved plan, or that subcontractor was gonna be fired and they would hire a new one. That's the last I heard on the whole thing, as far as the basins. So I don't know if they've fired anybody, and I don't know if they've hired anybody, but that was the last I heard about the basins, which is holding up everything. So, Mr. Aguirre?
Sure. I'm gonna take a minute, if you don't mind, because we have some new members of our glorious committee here. So I'd just like to bring you up to speed. Brook Street Solar Project is not online. I am refusing to give grid interconnection because they have not built out the stormwater infrastructure in compliance with the plans. Months and months have drug out, no fault of anyone in this room or anyone who works for the town, solely on the backs of the developer for the delays. They have tried numerous times to get me to come into an agreement with them to allow grid interconnection, and I refused to do so. The recommendation by us was fix the basins, build them out the way they were approved to be, or come up with another design that works. Through, I think, several meetings, they attempted to try to do another design. It didn't pass muster with Agent Pilling. So they're now back to asking if I will allow grid interconnection if they build out the stormwater infrastructure in compliance with the original plans approved by the planning board and the stormwater committee. I have agreed to do that, but only after Agent Pilling and other members of this committee agree that the stormwater infrastructure is in total compliance with the design plans. There's also a second part of this for final approval, which is certificate of completion. Once grid interconnection happens, provided they meet that criteria, there's another set of final approvals that are required that include planning board, building department, fire department, and some others. I will not allow certificate of completion to be issued until obviously all those other parameters are met. I have yet to hear about a timeline for stormwater basin construction or reconstruction, I guess I'll call it. So we're still in a holding pattern. But I have communicated with the developer that I will allow grid interconnection if the stormwater infrastructure is repaired.
Thank you.
So also what Mr. Aguirre said, we had a meeting, and I think it was the May meeting, and there was an engineer on the screen representing Grasshopper, and we told him then that what was being proposed was out of the question. Mrs. Easterday was here representing the planning board, and we asked her what her opinion was, and she said, that's a modification that's got to go back to planning. So that took care of that. And as I said, I've heard nothing since, but since we have a meeting going on today, I will get in touch with Mr. Hafez and say, we had a meeting today, we have heard nothing, we want an update of what is happening. Did you hire a new contractor subcontractor to do those basins? And get some information. I will, whatever I get, I will email to Mrs. Grassi so that you'll have information. If you have any comments or questions, please send them to her, not to each other and not to me, because we don't want to violate the open meeting law. But if you send it back to Mrs. Grassi, she will get them to me, and we'll see where it goes from there. But just to comment on what Mr. Aguirre said, it has been over a year, because I had the conversation at least last August with Mr. Hafez, and I said to him, this is when the battery issue came up, I said, set the batteries aside, get those basins working, get up and running, generating electricity, so you're selling a product and making money. And they were concerned about some kind of a deadline with the state, and I says, just apply for an extension, you're gonna get it, which they did. Another whole year has gone by, and it's probably longer than that. So, once again, and continuing, the Stormwater Committee has bent over backwards to try to assist them to do what is right, but I don't know who, in all honesty, I don't know really who's calling the shots higher up there in Mississauga, Ontario. I think Mr. Hafez, who is the contact person, is getting marching orders from somebody, but if they were going to take steps to terminate one contractor and hire another, I don't know why that hasn't happened. But again, everything that's happened thus far, the town, this committee, its agents, its employees, its representatives have bent over backwards. So I will get in touch with him and get some information, and we will email it out to you. And in the meantime, it's on for next month's agenda. Mrs. Beausoleil, did you wish to speak?
Yes. Mr. Aguirre, you had just said that you're going to allow them to proceed with the connection if they do the, abide by how the plans are
On the stormwater.
on the stormwater.
Right.
So if they do that, what is the guarantee that that's going to work? Like, so we were told that that's not going to work. What's in that plan is not going to work. It needs drainage.
But are you referring to the drainage that was approved by several boards and committees in this town?
Mm-hmm.
Who was?
But we were told by a friend of ours that this is, so what I'm saying is if they do it, what's to say it's going to work, even if they abide by that?
I wasn't a review engineer, so I can't comment either way.
Oh, okay.
That may be, with due respect, someone's opinion,
Mhm.
but I have to go with what the planning board's engineer and with what our stormwater engineer has reviewed. If there was a problem with it, then it would have been brought up during the review process. As far as I know, that's not the case. What was presented and approved will work. If it doesn't work, to your point,
Mhm.
then the town will have to intervene and issue some type of a notice of violation on the project.
Okay.
Yes, but I cannot withhold grid interconnection on the what if it doesn't work. If they build out the stormwater infrastructure and it's in compliance with the plans that were approved, I'm prohibited from stopping the project, then I would be negligent.
Okay.
So
And what about the other things that are on the?
that's the certificate of completion. I can't give a certificate of completion on the project, or I won't give a certificate of completion on the project until all the other parameters are met, all the conditions of the planning board, all the conditions of my building permit, of stormwater, board of health, any other conditions.
So does that, if they don't get that,
They don't get paid but for the project on their end. They cannot close out that project without the certificate of completion.
okay, so meaning like they could sell it, no.
It won't clear title. Without this certificate, it would be like, I don't know if this is a good analogy, you can't sell a house in Massachusetts with a septic without a Title V report.
Mhm.
Same thing, they wouldn't be able to sell that. The certificate of completion tells whoever's buying it that it's clear and not in violation with anything from the town.
Okay,
So there's two mechanisms that I have on our side to ensure compliance,
okay,
okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments on Brook Street Solar? Okay, hearing none. We will go back to agenda item 4D. This is the open meeting law complaint. So, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Patrick Higgins filed a open meeting law complaint against the Stormwater Committee, specifically me, for the July 20th meeting, and his allegation is that the Stormwater Committee violated the open meeting law by not making any statement that the meeting was being recorded as required by Mass General laws, so forth, so on. And his remedy for compliance is learn and comply with the open meeting law. Well, as you know, we had a special meeting posted for August the 10th. It was going to be a workshop meeting. But we didn't have a quorum, so nothing happened. But a number of members of this board have gone to the website and listened to it. There is absolutely no violation, because, as a matter of fact, I had called the meeting to order, and Mr. Pilling said, wait, we're not recording.
I can probably pull it up on the screen. If you want.
Yeah.
Copies.
Of the audio video?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen it. So he'll bring it up and you can hear it. The first thing you're going to hear is Mr. Pilling stopped me. And the first thing you're going to hear is a soft voice that says, "You're on." And then I read the statement. So I don't know what he's talking about, but I did send an email to Mr. Higgins and say, we were going to act on this at the August 10th meeting, but I didn't have a quorum. Therefore, it'll be on the agenda for today's meeting. I copied the Attorney General's office on my email reply, because that's, and the town clerk, the people you have to copy. I got an email from the Attorney General's office saying, would you please send the complaint to us because we don't have it. So my thought is, where did it go? I mean, did he send it to us and not follow procedure? If you don't, he was complaining to the AG's office, but they didn't have it. So I emailed it to her, and she got the email saying we would talk about it today. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so you all heard me say it. I read the complaint to you. So obviously, a response will be sent to Mr. Higgins indicating that at the meeting today, the opening of that meeting was played, and everybody heard me read the statement that he said I didn't read. So I will probably ask him also to please retract the complaint, which should be interesting since the AG's office didn't have it and I had to send it to him. So anyhow, is there any discussion or anything? Because I'm going to need a motion. Excuse me, Mr. Pilling?
Do we all have to acknowledge that we have, understand the complaint or something like that? Isn't there like one component, like we have to all acknowledge we read and understand that?
Well, my understanding is that the committee has to be aware of it, know what the complaint was, and then come up with a resolution. Like, if I really didn't do it, I would have had a proposal on what to say, but we've got to respond in writing, which I intend to do.
No, I understood. I just didn't know if we all had to say, yes, I heard and understood it, but then I assume a motion to authorize you to respond for the committee would be appropriate.
Yes. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Okay, I'll make that a motion.
Discussion? So you heard me read the complaint. You saw the evidence that there's no reason for a complaint. And we're going to send a letter and copy the appropriate people, agencies, whatever. And hopefully that'll be the end of it, okay? So I'm gonna call for a vote. Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling? Mr. Aguirre? Perry? Mr. Mello? Mr. Woods? Mrs. Goulart? I would assume Mr. Higgins is watching the meeting, so Mr. Higgins, I will follow up in writing. Next agenda item, 4E, 333 Main Street, Zeneca property.
So Nancy, you had sent an email to me. It says, under the reports section, please add 333 Main Street, Zeneca property. There was a wetland scientist at the COMCOM meeting last week who gave a brief presentation. She was given permission to mark the wetlands. She mentioned a cleanup plan. last I heard, that was a brownfield site, meaning leave it to Mother Nature. Tom knows something about this topic, so I have copied him.
Okay, Mr. Ferry, do you have any comments? Remember you and I met with that engineer way back,
Way back.
the one that had at least $1 million contract, and he had the plans that showed all the wells they were gonna put in and all that. Have you heard anything since then?
Yes, they were in town a couple weeks ago. They're working on the NRAD. It's a very slow process. I believe it's like 6 years old already. There is smaller activities that are happening, and part of that is the flagging the wetlands that needs to happen. That's where they are with that.
So is this, Mr. Mello, from a Concom position, is when you have a site like 333 Main Street, is this something, I know that they do periodic testing of the wells, but are there other things that have to occur, like to report back to the Conservation Commission or something else, even if they're never gonna clean it up?
Unless we should an order of conditions with, that requires what you're asking. Brownfield, I remember, was Elm Street.
Well, they own that one too. But when Mr. Ferry and I met with the engineer for the original plan to clean it up and put in wells, it was our understanding that he was going to be looking at literally of cleaning it up. But the cost to do that, because you would have to remove soil and all that, was so huge that the feeling was the EPA is probably feeling the better thing to do is let it go to Mother Nature. Continue to monitor the wells, but don't start digging it up or doing anything else. And I hadn't heard anything else until that came up at the Concom meeting. So, and I said to the lady, the engineer that spoke that night, are you planning to come before the Stormwater Committee? And she says, all I'm doing is getting permission to mark wetlands and things like that. So we'll.
And that's all we have before us.
Yeah, so this may come up again. So put it on the list, but ask me whether or not there's anything. We'll just keep it out there and say, has anyone heard anything about 333 Main Street? It may be just a simple follow-up from maybe the original plan, I don't know. Have you heard anything, Mr. Aguirre?
They heard Lisa was in town, so they wanted to get the wetland straightened out.
Any discussion, questions, or anything? Hearing none. Agenda item 4F, 2040 County Street. Where are we with that?
I think Conservation Commission was dealing with them, supposedly some kind of site plan, and they were filing with the Conservation Commission.
Okay, all right.
I
So
haven't seen anything come across yet, so I don't know if they've filed anything.
2040, is that the site on,
the former,
behind the church?
Yes, that's,
They come to our next meeting.
Okay, so they did file something.
Yes, they-
Okay.
okay, so Mrs. Grassi, this will be on for next month, and we'll have Mrs. Caledonia give us an update.
Okay.
If there's anything to update.
I have something to add.
Yes, Mr. Aguirre.
I received an email from someone I don't know, asking me what the process would be to put a building on that site. So I was waiting until today to hear an update on it, but obviously I intend to respond and say, whatever you intend to do there, make sure your engineer's aware of it, because it's gonna also need conservation approval if their intent is to put a structure
All
on.
we're approving actually is a rehabbed wetland line.
Right,
Wasn't something with the driveway, they were like, the parking lot, they were gonna spread some gravel or something in the parking lot or something too?
no. So I'm gonna recommend that they do that. Whether or not they'll try to modify the filing, I don't know. But just yesterday, I received an email about putting a building on my property. It's an additional one.
Haven't heard.
Yeah, the other thing that she mentioned that night was there are still some concrete slabs there that were buildings sat on. The parking lot is turning into, I mean, Mother Nature's doing a tune on that. It's grass and clumps and whatever. I was approached about 2 weeks ago by an individual who was complaining that the town wasn't doing anything to help him find a location for his business, because he says he's got to move from where he is in town, wants to stay in town. And he brought up that site, and I said to him, the only thing I know is, based on a number of years ago, it was considered a brownfield site, and that the EPA was saying they're not going to allow it to be dug up. They will continue to test wells, and Mother Nature will take that property over. So I said, that's all I can tell you. So I don't see that as being considered for industrial development. That company has donated land to the town of Dayton, not only the parking area next to the library on Main Street, but also some lots up off of Main Street. And in all of the donation agreements, it clearly states there can be no digging of any kind on any of the property. And so I can't imagine development at the manufacturing site, considering the library parking lot and the other lots were not used for manufacturing, and yet they have that stipulation that there can be no digging, so.
Just for the record, I believe you jumped back to Zeneca. We're not on 2040 County Street, where you just talked about the no digging and all that. That's
Yes.
relative to Zeneca, correct?
Right, yes, that's all Zeneca, that's why I said 333 Main.
I just want to make sure, because
All right.
I wouldn't want anybody thinking we were talking about
No.
2040 County Street.
So that'll be on the, that's why I said would be on the agenda for next month, yeah. 2371 County Street, does anybody know if DEP has responded yet? Okay, so that's for next time too. We need to schedule a workshop. Excuse me, we still got to work on our stormwater bylaw and regulations. As I said, we didn't have a quorum for August the 10th, and so we have still got to get this going. I sat in on the statewide EPA meeting yesterday morning about the MS4, and there was quite a bit of discussion about updating bylaws and regulations. I didn't get into that because I know we're going to be doing it. We still have the work that was done by the Audubon Society, so it's not like nothing's been done at all. But we're now into the reporting of the 5th year, which began July 1st. And we need to get something going here, so. August the 10th was a Wednesday, and it was at 9 AM. I'm looking for a date, and I'm wondering if a Wednesday's okay, and I want to, if we can, have a 9 AM meeting, but limit it to 1 hour. Yeah, what had happened also for the 10th, I had got the stormwater complaint and added it to the agenda, but that's why we didn't act on that until today. But looking at dates in August, is August the 14th at 9 AM a possible, excuse me, that isn't gonna work, there's a department head. Oh, wait a minute.
Wait, that was 3 days ago. You mean September?
September 14th, there'll be a department head meeting on the 7th, I believe.
Yes.
And that's 11 AM.
Currently, yes.
On the 14th at 11 AM, I have MMA. And I've missed a couple of them because of department head meetings. Is 9 AM on the 14th the possibility for a 1 hour meeting? Just, no? Come up with another date for me.
How about the 15th?
How's the 15th at 9 AM for 1 hour? We'd meet here, we'll go over the bylaw and
I'm on vacation, but you guys don't need me for that.
I think you had some stuff, so you were to leave it with Roz? Because you talked about some stuff.
Right.
I
will.
What about the rest of the committee?
Which date was that, 15th?
September 15th, 9 AM, 1 hour.
That would be a workshop.
Yep.
Looks good so far.
Jim, when are you on vacation? That whole week?
Every day's a vacation, right, Jim?
I might be in Maine that week myself.
that would give us.
Mr. Ferry, when are you going? Are you,
He's available.
Yes,
I gotta look at the calendar.
there's a conflict, I don't believe there is, on Thursday, that's a Thursday, I don't believe so.
Charlie, you available
Thursday, probably not.
Thursday during the day?
no, 9 AM.
Yeah.
9 AM, I'm seriously, 1 hour. So if anyone has any thoughts ahead of time,
I don't know, we're gonna set a big alarm.
And then each other like, yeah, right.
We're gonna set like a big backup alarm, and when it's 1 hour, it'll go beep, beep, beep.
hey, well, we got through the who's what's this there,
Who's he, what's
we
he?
had to do today.
It's 6 AM, right?
Only if you're bringing the refreshments.
Okay, sold.
All right, so 9 AM on the 15th of September. Any thoughts you have about the bylaw and the regulations? Mrs. Grassi, if you could email the bylaw and regulations to Mr. Mello and Mr. Woods, and if you just look at them and you're not gonna be here and say, for example, a suggestion has been made to change the 35,000 square feet minimum area of disturbance to a lesser number. I don't know if that's gonna happen or not, but if you look at that and say, we ought to make, because I remember somebody saying this should be at least an acre, and I've also heard somebody saying it should be less than 35,000. So it's just thoughts and whatever. But we've got to start somewhere, and if we get some input within an hour or less, we can at least make a list of the stuff that has come up so far, all right? So that when we bring it back for the next meeting, we'll have a place to start. I've been summarizing the Audubon review of our bylaws, and I got a couple of things there that might be considered for Dayton, but that's what it's all about, okay? But the EPA is part of the notice of intent, and we've started the 5th year, and the permit actually expired with the 4th year, but when a permit is due to expire, unless the EPA has issued the new permit and guidelines, the other one stays in effect, like the last one was 10 years, so. Anyhow, so if you would make note of that, and we'll send out a meeting notice. But in the meantime, if you take a look at it, and feel free to mark it up, or any thoughts you have, so we have a place to start. And I don't see us getting into any discussion. If we can just come up with a list of whatever thoughts you may have about whether it's the bylaw or the regs, so that we can get going on this. Any comments, discussions? We all set with that? Project update for 903 Tremont 624 Middle. This is agenda item 5B. Anything on that solar project?
Yes, they sent me a report. Okay, so it appears that someone else knew. My name is Philip Romano with Blue Wave Solar. Going forward, I will be working with you and the planning board to finalize the development of the Dayton Solar Project at 903 Tremont, 624 Middle Street. As requested, a monthly progress update is below. Feel free to share this update at the next meeting. An EPC contractor has been identified for the project, and full contract negotiations are underway. The identified EPC contractor will be released for the end of the month to finalize the building permit drawings and procure long lead items. Blue Wave is working with the planning office to finalize the decommissioning agreement and ensure the necessary bonds are in place. Following the execution of our contract with the identified EPC, they will be responsible for assembling drawing packages and submitting to the building department. The panel and energy storage units for the project have all been ordered and allocated to the site. Delivery dates are still being finalized. Mrs. Stephanie Schechter, the assessor, has confirmed she received the necessary payments related to the 61A removal for both properties. As always, feel free to email me, call, or text me with any questions. I look forward to working with you.
Okay, so they'll be on the agenda for next month, if there's any updates. Any questions about 903 Tremont or 624 Middle? That's 903 Tremont is the Cabral Farm, and 624 Middle is Mrs. Racine's property.
Nope.
Agenda item 5D. I think we're done with this. Mr. Agia, didn't you issue the certificate of completion?
Yes. This can be taken off of the list.
Okay, very good.
One down.
And the 5E Main Street water pipe replacement, anything on that yet? Mr. Ferry, you're up.
Please share with us. Sure. So the biggest delay is the new water main. There is no scheduled delivery date yet. Not the only entity that's an issue. Could be another 6 months before there's delivery of it. So that's the delay in the project of the water district. However, the National Grid is trudging forward. They have a scheduled poll hearing for the whole length of the street and a little bit of William Street for this project. That's for the Selectmen's meeting September 14th. Lisa is preliminary working on the conservation goals with the conflicts with the woodlands. It's not quite ready, I don't believe. I don't think they have a on your agenda yet.
No.
But that's coming soon. That's probably following the Selectmen's meeting. That's what we have this time. So I would say it's safe to say they're probably not gonna dig this year.
But National,
Delivery site.
but National Grid they'll move ahead with what they gotta do?
Yeah, they're still moving ahead with the engineering, yes.
That's a lot. It's a lot of poles, all the way to Elm Street?
From Elm to a few on Williams, yes. I think for the Selectmen, it's only 37 poles.
It's a lot of
And I
poles.
think 4 or 5 on Williams. And then there's a handful that interfere with the process several times. That's all I have at this time.
Very good. So this will be on the agenda for the next meeting, next regular meeting. That is the Sally Richmond Brook. Agenda item 5F, Winthrop Street Rest Area Catch Basin. Anything from DOT?
No, I'm not expecting a response. They did allude to that they wanted to see a weather event themselves. Hopefully they're going to see it before winter. Don't look like they're going to see it.
Oh, it's gonna rain before winter. I just don't know when.
And to allow enough time to do a repair, I don't see that.
There was some equipment parked up on that grassy area there, and I was wondering who that belonged to.
That belongs to the town bank.
Oh, that answers that question.
Our stuff anyway.
Okay. Agenda item 5G, Forest Hills. Anything on that in the town?
Yes, so we went out last week, the 9th and 10th, and I witnessed a whole slew of drainage test holes. They did at least one in every drainage basin out there. Now that they have that information, and the review engineers from the Planning Board and Conservation, which were two different people, they're gonna start on revisions on the plan set, taking into account all that information. They went to Conservation Commission, Monday, and they asked for like a 2 or 3 month continuance from them from Taunton Conservation Commission. So I expect it's gonna take them a while to revise the whole set, there's a lot of sheets, a lot of lots, a lot of drainage, so.
So to follow up on what Mr. Pilling just said, I went to the Taunton Conservation Commission meeting this past Monday night, and the public hearing has been continued to the November meeting. I believe it's November the 14th. Joshua Glass, their attorney, was there and requested the continuance. When I got up to speak, My question to him was, I understand the plans have come in town, they have not come to the Stormwater Committee yet. So what are the plans? And he said, they had the feedback from the test pits, holes that were dug, and the plans had to be revised, which is just what you said. On the Taunton side, the question from the Concom questions were, how many square feet of disturbance do you actually think there's going to be in Taunton for the basin they're proposing in Taunton? And the answer was 59,480 square feet of disturbance. And how much of that disturbance is going to be within the buffer zone? And the response was 12,700 feet. So, and also Attorney Glass said there is a potential vernal pool in Taunton in the wetlands that has not been certified, but it's potential. And he referred to the beta report letter and page 11. I'm not sure if the beta report is 11 pages, but anyhow. So they did continue it, and so I'll make a note for November the 14th to go to the next meeting. The chairman, Stephen Turner, said, "Is that all you have to say?" I said, "Yes, sounds like a good idea to me to continue it." He says, "That's the least you've ever said when you've come to one of our meetings." But I will point out, there were a couple of cases ahead of this one, and one was to get permission to build a shed, and the family was there with 2 little girls. And the mother spoke, and she was saying that they wanted permission to build a shed, and it had been looked at by their conservation agent, and everything was okay. And when the vote was called, the motion and second, the chairman said, "How can we deny this with these 2 little girls sitting there waiting? Because that's where they're going to store their bikes." So it was voted, and one little girl started crying. And then the other one, there was 3 family members, mother, father, and a daughter, and they were looking for permission to actually start filling and using a swimming pool. And there was discussion about wetlands, and everything else was okay according to their agent. And the question was asked, "You haven't started filling that pool, have you?" And there was no response at all. And anyhow, a similar comment, "How can we deny this when we've got a child sitting here?" So it passed. She jumped out of the chair. She was jumping up and down and hugging her parents. And as the father and mother and they all left, he said, "Now we can use it." Oh, then there was one question, in the fall, "Do you plan to drain that pool?" And the answer was no. And so the Concom member said, "Good, because Taunton doesn't have water to be dumping out every, seasonal to fill pools." So anyhow, and then the comment was again made, "How do we deny something when they brought their kids with them?" So when he made the remark about my remarks being the shortest ever, I said, "I didn't bring any kids with me." As I said to Mr. Pilling, I should have said, "If you remember the first time Dayton came here, that contingent I had with me, those are all my kids."
There you go.
There you go. So anyhow, that's what.
I'd like to say that Forest Hills doesn't have any water yet.
Well, according to Attorney Glass, things seem to be moving along. But again, I didn't question that.
Well, I keep stopping and talking to the Prudential Committee, and they telling me no. That development is outside of the district. The North Dayton Fire District is defined by a map.
Right.
The village. That area is not in their district.
So regardless of what were proposed for the area, no matter who was out there, if I were to build a private home, I can't get town water because I'm not in the district.
Right.
All right.
Now, they said they would provide them water if they put a water main all the way down Tremont Street. I mean, Forest Street, the whole entire length, 2-point-something million. And they said, "Oh, we can't afford that." They said, "Well, we can't give you no water."
Really?
Yeah.
So,
Because the backside of Forest Street, everybody on the west side of the street, their backyards is the boundary of the fire district.
Mhm.
So they don't really have to provide them water.
Well, which makes sense. Why would you include a forest, water district when you don't need water out there in the forest?
Right, that's why they call it forestry.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Any public input from all the public that's not here? Do we have any correspondence?
Nope, I'm revising those meeting notes as we're talking.
For July 19th? Okay,
I changed the meeting minutes to meeting notes, added it in at the bottom. Drainage basin 1 was visited. It was noticed that the opening and fence was on private property. The gate will need to be relocated to another gate will need to be installed at the front area roadside so emergency vehicles can access. And there was one other. Oh, I changed locust to trees.
okay,
Building Commissioner James Aguirre stated that the trees in the septic field will need to be removed
That was the roots.
as the roots will damage the boxes.
okay. Is there a motion to approve the site visit meeting notes of July 19th and the regular meeting minutes of July the 20th?
So moved.
Motions are second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Catavia.
Aye.
Mr. Pilling. Agia. Mr. Ferry. Mr. Mello. Mr. Woods and Mrs. Goulart, all aye. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor, Mrs. Catavia?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling? Mr. Agia. Mr. Ferry? Mr. Mello. Mr. Woods and Mrs. Goulart, we're adjourned. And by the way,